Have you ever heard an idea that sounded like pure mysticism until someone tried to measure it? For a long time, people rolled their eyes at frequency, called it too strange, too philosophical, too slippery to pin down with instruments, protocols, or controls, too far from anything measurable, too convenient for people who needed certainty. And yet, a small team decided to treat you like the experiment, not symbolically, not spiritually, operationally, asking one unsettling question as they opened the file. If you are the variable, what exactly are you transmitting right now? They didn't treat frequency like a cosmic gift or a spiritual curse. They treated it like interference, a repeating internal noise that distorts whatever signal you thought was just you. Not symbolically, not metaphysically, operationally. In their frame, the question isn't whether the universe is listening. The question is whether your own system is running clean or running loud. So the file opens like a lab report. You strip away inspirational language. You replace it with instruments, observation, logging, controls for bias, a baseline you can return to when your story starts lying to you. And what gets measured isn't light or waves or anything romantic. It's the ordinary, sleep that won't settle, attention that won't hold, reactions that spike without warning. The kind of normal you stop noticing because it happens every day. They look for repeatability, not revelation. If a claim can't survive the same day, the same body, the same room, it's not a signal, it's a story. So they keep the language cold on purpose, so your mind can't decorate it today. That was the moment the metaphor became uncomfortable. Because the moment you define frequency as pattern under load, you're forced to admit patterns leave fingerprints. And the first fingerprints aren't dramatic. They're quiet. They show up where you assume nothing is wrong. Stress doesn't arrive with a thunderclap. It arrives as disruption. It is tied to trouble sleeping and to that specific sensation of being overwhelmed, like your mind is carrying more weight than it was designed to hold. Not as a personality trait, as a state, a condition of the system. Something you can observe without believing in anything at all. And yet most people do the opposite. They moralize it. They call it weakness, lack of discipline, bad luck. They turn a measurable shift into a private failure. Which is why this approach matters. It removes blame, but it doesn't remove responsibility. If interference exists, you don't argue with it. You calibrate. You notice when the baseline drifts. You stop pretending the noise isn't there just because you can function through it. Because once you accept that your inner noise has a pattern, an even stranger implication follows. You are not a passive observer of your life. You are the environment your decisions are made inside. Night is a small variable. Same room, same body, same day behind you. And yet the moment the lights go out, the interference becomes audible. In a clean system, sleep is not a reward. It is a downshift. A controlled descent where the mind releases its grip and the whole machine recalibrates without your permission. But when your frequency is off, when internal noise repeats, sleep doesn't fail dramatically. It fails quietly. The off switch doesn't engage. You lie there with your eyes closed, but the system keeps running. Not a spiritual sign, not a cosmic message. A plain signal your system can't downshift. People confuse it with discipline. They think the solution is willpower, a harder routine, another rule. But insomnia isn't always a character flaw. Stress and anxiety are common causes of it. Sometimes the trigger is short-lived. Sometimes it lingers. Either way, the pattern looks the same from the inside. You want rest, and your mind refuses to settle. And stress isn't abstract here. It's linked to sleep trouble. It shows up as the simplest disruption, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or feeling restored when morning arrives. You wake up and the reset never completed. So you compensate. You borrow alertness from caffeine. You push through on adrenaline. You tell yourself you're fine because you're moving. Then the night comes back, and the noise is still there. This is where the experiment becomes uncomfortable, because it forces a different question. If sleep is the place where the system should correct itself, what does it mean when the correction process keeps getting interrupted? What is the system trying to process that it can't set down? And notice how subtle the footprint is. No dramatic breakdown, no obvious catastrophe, just a quiet, repeating failure to power down. A baseline that keeps drifting, one night at a time, until tired becomes your default setting, and you stop remembering what quiet feels like. So don't look for fireworks. Look for the whisper. The moment you realize you're in bed, exhausted and still wide awake, because something inside you is still on. At 2:17, the clock becomes an instrument. The ceiling becomes a screen. You run the same thought loop, then another, as if your brain is searching for an exit it can't find. The important detail is not the thought itself. It's the repeatability. Night after night, the same noise occupying the same bandwidth again, exactly. Run a control scenario in your head. Same morning, same phone, same volume. A message arrives, 2 lines, no threat, no emergency. Yesterday, it would have registered as neutral. Today, it lands like a slap. Your baseline jumps. Your threshold collapses. And the reaction is out of proportion to the stimulus, as if the gain knob has been turned without your consent. This is what a leak looks like. Not screaming, not dramatic. Just a steady spill of internal noise into the smallest moments. A kitchen drawer closes, and it sounds like an accusation. Someone clears their throat, and your body answers before your mind does. You don't decide to snap. You discover yourself snapping. People treat this as identity. They say, "I'm just an irritable person," or "this is my temperament now," as if a permanent label explains a temporary distortion. But stress can make you irritable. That single sentence changes the entire frame because it moves the story out of morality and into measurement. Not good or bad, not strong or weak. A system under load producing false positives. A detector set too sensitive will quietly flag shadows as threats, and you will trust the alarm. And once you see it as a system, you start noticing the mechanics. The irritability isn't always about anger. Sometimes it's sensitivity. Everything is too bright, too loud, too slow, too close. Sometimes it's impatience, a sense that the world is failing your internal schedule. Sometimes it's a blunt edge in your voice that shows up only after you've already spoken. The moment passes, and you're left with the same question every time. Why did that feel so big? That was the moment the stakes moved outward. Because the noise doesn't stay inside your skull. It exits through tone, through timing, through the way you look at someone for half a second too long. Your inner interference becomes someone else's environment. So here is the uncomfortable protocol. Don't argue with the trigger. Record the mismatch. If the same small inputs keep producing oversized outputs, your baseline is not baseline anymore. Your system is compensating. And when a system compensates long enough, the leak becomes the new normal. Which raises the next question. If irritability is what escapes first, what is building up behind it? Overload isn't a mood. It's what happens when your attention becomes a lab instrument, and it's currently uncalibrated. In a stable system, small tasks stay small. You answer the email. You wash the cup. You choose what to eat without turning it into a debate. But under persistent inner noise, everything arrives with the same weight. A simple decision stretches into a corridor with no exits. A minor obligation becomes a heavy object you drag across the day. You don't stop because you're lazy. You stop because there's no bandwidth left for real signals. This is the deepest fingerprint because it feels like your personality has changed. You assume you've lost motivation. You assume you've become weak. And yet stress can make you feel overwhelmed. Not as poetry, as a state your system can enter where the mind is carrying more than it can sort, and even silence feels crowded. Now watch the loop tighten. When stress and anxiety are common causes of insomnia, sleep stops being a reset and becomes another variable contaminated by noise. And when the reset fails, the day starts with a deficit you didn't choose. You compensate again. You push again. You stack tasks on top of fatigue. The system becomes more sensitive, not less. Overwhelm doesn't appear out of nowhere. It accumulates. That's why this sign is so easy to hide and so hard to admit. You can still function. You can still show up. But inside, every request feels like an extra tab open. Every conversation, another process running in the background. Your mind isn't empty, it's congested. And congestion turns ordinary life into pressure. So here is the uncomfortable shift in framing. This isn't about whether you're broken. It's about whether your baseline has drifted so far that overload feels normal. Because once too much becomes your default setting, you stop noticing the noise that caused it. And there's a quiet cost. The things that matter most start losing priority. Not because you don't care, but because the system is triaging. It chooses the loudest signal, not the truest one. If you don't recalibrate, who will live with the error your mind keeps outputting in every room you enter? So the question isn't, are you broken, but what protocol brings you back to baseline? You don't need belief for this. You need a log. For 48 hours, run yourself like a quiet study. Same subject, same environment, no speeches, no manifesting. Just a record designed to reduce bias and expose confounders. 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, night, write down 3 lines. Not essays, not interpretations, just answers. Timestamp each entry. Note anything that could distort the readout. Caffeine, late scrolling, skipped meals, a tense conversation, a deadline. You're not blaming these, you're tagging them. In a lab, you don't erase confounders, you label them, so the pattern you're tracking isn't just noise from the environment. Keep it factual, even when it stings. 1. Did the system shut down last night? 2. Where was the irritability threshold lowest today? 3. What task felt overwhelming and how did I avoid it? Keep the wording. The consistency is the instrument. If you change the question, you change the measurement. Because stress can show up as sleep problems. Stress can show up as irritability. Stress can make you feel overwhelmed. And stress and anxiety are common causes of insomnia. None of that is mystical. It's operational, observable states that tend to cluster when the system is under load. So your only job is to notice clustering. Did the night fail to reset you? And did the day inherit that error? Did a small stimulus trigger a large response? Did the to-do list feel heavier than the tasks inside it? Do not grade yourself. Do not fix yourself. Record, don't judge. If you miss an entry, write missed and move on. Missing is also a variable. And here's the discomfort hook. If writing those lines makes you tense, defensive, or suddenly eager to quit, good. That reaction is data. It tells you the log is touching something real enough to resist being seen. At the end of 48 hours, read the entries like a technician. Look for repetition. Look for drift. Look for the same signal appearing in different rooms of your day. Because when you have a log, a pattern stops being a mood and becomes a footprint. This is not a diagnosis. It's a protocol for awareness. If these symptoms make it hard to function day to day, or if they don't let up, consider getting professional support. And once you can see the pattern, another question appears, stranger and more useful. What changes first when you start returning to baseline? So here's the clean conclusion without poetry. If you thought you were out of alignment because the universe decided to punish you, that was never the useful model. You're not cursed. You're noisy, and noise leaves traces. You are not separate from the system. You are the system. And when the system is carrying a sustained inner load, the signals don't arrive as visions. They arrive as glitches you call normal. The night where the off switch doesn't engage, the daytime where your irritability threshold drops and you surprise yourself, the moment where everything feels overwhelming and your bandwidth collapses under tasks that used to be light. Not a spiritual warning, not a cosmic message. A plain operational readout. Stress can show up as sleep problems, stress can show up as irritability, and stress can make you feel overwhelmed. And stress and anxiety are common causes of insomnia. That doesn't diagnose you. It just removes the mystery so you can stop bargaining with it. So imagine the lab report in front of you. No symbols, no destiny, just observations, written in your own handwriting, repeated across hours. The same pattern at night, the same leak in daylight, the same flood in the middle of a routine task. That raised an uncomfortable question. If this is measurable, why have you been treating it like personality? Because once you see it this way, the stakes change. The noise isn't trapped in your head. It leaks into your decisions, your tone, your relationships, your days. And if you don't calibrate the instrument, someone else will live with the measurement error. Because the question isn't, are you broken? It's, what are you repeating under load? And if you can name the pattern, you can interrupt it. Not with faith, with attention, recorded precisely, the way you would track any system you actually cared about right now. So do one small thing that proves you were here until the end. Write this in the comments. I am calibrating. Not because you're weak, because the system is loud. And if you want the next step, how to reduce the noise without lying to yourself, how to bring the readings back toward baseline with protocols you can actually repeat, watch the next video. Stay with this thread. Because now you don't need belief. You have signals. You have a log. And once something is observed clearly, it can't be unseen.